What intensity should I do my interval at? How long should my interval be? How long should my rest interval be? If you have all these questions, stick around because in today's video, I'm going to talk about the 4 basic types of intervals and what to keep in mind when creating your interval session. So there are essentially 3 things you can manipulate when creating an interval session. The first and foremost is the intensity. The second is the length of the work interval, and the third is the length of the rest interval. Generally, higher the intensity, the shorter the duration of the work interval. Now you can manipulate these 3 to come up with 4 basic kinds of interval sessions. The first one is what we call an anaerobic capacity interval. The second session is what we call a VO2 max session. The third session is a threshold session, and the fourth one is going to be a tempo session. Now each of these sessions actually have a specific work to rest ratio. I'm going to talk about each one in detail. Anaerobic capacity. Now these intervals are really short and punchy and are usually between 30 seconds and 2 minutes long. They generally have a work to rest ratio of 1:2, which means the work interval is half the length of the rest interval. So on the bike, you can have a workout such as 6 by 1 minute at anaerobic capacity or zone 6 with a 2-minute recovery. You could do the exact same workout on the run, or if you prefer to train on a track, you could do something like 6 by 200 meter repeats with a 60-second jog. Generally, it takes about 30 to 35 seconds to do a 200 meter repeat. So 60 seconds is twice the length of the work interval. In this case, 30 to 35 seconds for about 200 meters. The next interval is what we call a VO2 max session. Over here, the intervals are generally between 3 and 8 minutes long, and you want to maintain a ratio of 1:1. So the rest interval and the work interval are going to be of equal duration. So on the bike, you could do a session such as 6 by 3 minutes at zone 5 with a 3-minute recovery, or maybe 6 by 4 minutes at zone 5 with a 4-minute recovery. You could do the exact same session on the run, or if you prefer to train by distance, you could do something like 6 by 800 meter repeats at zone 5B, and you could have a 3-minute recovery. Generally, 800 meter repeats take you anywhere between 3 to 4 minutes. So a 3-minute recovery is pretty close to the 1:1 ratio. Now let's talk about threshold intervals. These generally have a ratio of 2:1 where the work interval is twice as long as the rest interval and are usually between 10 and 20 minutes long. So an example session on the bike might be 3 by 10 minutes right around FTP or your threshold, and you can take a 5-minute recovery. Or it could be something like 2 by 20 minutes with a 10-minute recovery. You could do this exact same session on the run. However, if you prefer to train by distance, you could do something like 3 by 2 kilometer repeats with a 5-minute recovery. The 2 kilometer repeats will be around your zone 4 or your lactate threshold pace. And let's assume that 2 kilometers takes you about 10 minutes to do or 11 minutes to do. In this case, a 5-minute recovery is pretty close to the ratio of 2:1 where the work interval is twice as long as the rest interval. The next interval is what we call tempo intervals. These are generally done at zone 3, have a ratio of 4:1 and are at least 20 minutes long. So on the bike, you could do a session such as 3 by 20 minutes at 80% FTP, and you can take a 5-minute recovery. At the same time, you can do this exact same session on the run where you do 3 by 20 minutes at zone 3 pace and you take a 5-minute recovery. If you're new to the sport or you're not comfortable running 20 minutes at zone 3 pace, you can actually shorten it to 10 minutes and keep the intensity at zone 3. But you can also shorten the rest interval. So you could do 10 minutes on, 2.5 minutes off. That still gives you a ratio of 4:1. And just as a note, these ratios are not set in stone. You can be flexible with them. So if an 800 meter interval is taking you 3 minutes and 30 seconds, you can still use a 3-minute recovery. It's still going to be a VO2 max session because the intention is to get your heart rate up. So these are not set in stone. You don't have to abide by them the way it is. You have the liberty and the freedom to tweak the intervals, but you generally want to follow the guidelines. For instance, anaerobic capacity, generally the rest is longer than the work interval. VO2 max, you want to keep them as close as possible. Threshold sessions, the threshold sessions are going to be approximately twice as long as the rest interval. And tempo is obviously a lot longer. It could be 4:1 or even 3:1 if you're starting out. It's not set in stone. And similarly, if you're an advanced athlete, you could do tempo intervals with a ratio of 5:1, where you could do 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. So the idea is you start off with these ratios and then you sort of build upon it as you get fitter. Alright, I hope you guys found this video informative. If you did, give it a thumbs up and I'll see you guys next time.